welcome everyone to this webinar, this Higher Education Library Technology webinar, A New Age for Library Metadata. I'm Ken Chad from KenChadconsulting. I'm a library consultant that works in the area of library technology to make libraries more effective. And today I'm really pleased to have Lesley Whyte with us. Lesley has got probably more experience with metadata than almost anyone I can think of. She's one of the founding directors of BDS. And BDS aggregates, curates, and delivers metadata relating to print, ebooks, and also audiobooks, films, music, and video games. A lot of experience in delivering metadata to libraries and to companies that deal with libraries. So I'm going to start and ask you, I'm going to stop sharing screen. And Lesley, welcome. I'm so pleased to have you on this webinar. And I mentioned you've got a lot of experience. What I'll do is, there was a really interesting blog interview with you of 40 years at Catalogue, and I'm going to share that link with people. But one thing we share is we've both been cataloguers in our past. So I wonder, Lesley, just to start with, just give us a little bit of background on BDS, what it does, the scale of the operation. Just tell us a few facts and figures, if you like.
Certainly. Well, good afternoon, Ken. Thank you so much for including me in your series of webinars and to talk about a subject that really has been the focus of my entire professional life. And it started a long time ago. My first job as a library cataloguer was in 1980 at Glasgow University. So I've been working with bibliographic information for my entire professional career. But to talk about BDS, along with my colleague Eric Green, we founded BDS in January 1995. And we have a team now of 60 people who are all engaged in the creation and the dissemination of metadata. We started off with 10 people, and I remember friends who heard I was involved in a new business were a little aghast when they knew that we were employing 10 people, and they said, well, can't you make do with less people? And I said, no, we can't, because this is a service where we have to be able to provide a credible option for people wanting to use our facilities. So we started with 10, worked up to 60, and the 60 staff are roughly broken up into 20 book metadata specialists, a further 20 programmers and IT support who devise systems that allow our data to be created effectively and shared with all of our customers. We have 10 people involved in home entertainment, metadata creation, and about 10 people involved in sales and other support activities. So that really makes up the 60 people.
So that's quite an impressive operation, I think. And tell me, how does the metadata that you create go out? What are the channels by which that metadata reaches libraries? Because there are various channels, aren't there?
There are various channels, and the most commonly used one is MARC records, either going into our products or being delivered direct to the customers, the library suppliers and libraries that we deal with. But we also have trade customers who use different formats, and Onyx being a common requirement. We can send data out in Onyx. We have people coming into our systems, and we have people that we send data to on a daily basis. And that was really one of the revolutionary things that we introduced into BDS. At the time when the company was set up, the norm was to get a monthly CD-ROM. And Eric and I both felt that publishing is a dynamic process, and we had to be able to keep our customers better informed about the new books that were being published so that they could arrange to buy pre-publication, and also to accommodate any last-minute publishing that came about because of historic circumstances. So the daily delivery of information was something new that I believe we first pioneered. It was partly because the internet was a new service, and it will be very hard for anyone listening today to imagine a world without the internet. But we just started a business when the internet became a force, and it allowed us to take advantage of new technologies available at the time and provide a more dynamic service than had been done hitherto.
So you're cataloguing in those, as you know, books in hand, and you're getting all sorts of data in. You're that intermediary between publisher formats like Onyx and creating library formats. Now, one thing I do know is that although we're here to talk about the academic environment, in terms of public libraries in the UK, I understand that you're pretty much the provider of the metadata.
That is the case, Ken. And Eric and I started the business with the intention of providing a metadata service for public libraries and for their book suppliers. This was based on our own experience working in library book selling, and even nearly 30 years ago, public libraries were struggling to provide cataloguing information. So they were turning to their booksellers to give them information about the new books that were being published and also the books that they had purchased. And working in a book supply environment, we knew this was quite a challenge for book suppliers. It was very different from typing out a few pieces of information on a catalogue card. You needed specialists in classification and also the ability to supply the mark exchange format. So we decided to set up our business to provide a service to public libraries, book suppliers, so that they could service their target market. But at the time, there were something like 30 public library suppliers, and that seems like an incredible figure now. But the abolition of the netbook agreement meant that suddenly there was no margin left to buy a service to provide metadata to support the sale of books. And inevitably, there were consolidations and acquisitions in the marketplace. So there are very few public library suppliers now. And at a certain point, we realized we had to change the business model and engage directly with the libraries. And the interesting thing is, once we started charging public libraries for access to our metadata, they began to appreciate it more, and indeed started asking us for other types of service. So we developed services that fitted in very neatly with the different workflows in public libraries. And within a couple of years, I'm pleased to say that all of the public libraries in the UK were using our service directly.
So in academic libraries, things are a little different. So there you are, you're providing good quality metadata, it's an appreciated service. And then academic libraries do things a little bit differently. But one thing I was interested in having worked with library suppliers selling systems to US libraries, OCLC is another way that that academic libraries and public libraries get their records. But tell me, how does BDS differentiate from that approach that OCLC takes? What's different about the BDS approach?
BDS approach has been to anticipate demand at certain points in the library purchasing and cataloguing cycle. When we started the business, there was no electronic information available for new publishers' data in the UK. So we had to key absolutely everything from first principles. But publishers recognized the value of having electronic information for their publications. And so a standard was developed called Onyx. And for the last probably 20 years, we've been integral in harvesting Onyx from the publishers and making it into a format that libraries can use, upgrading the information where required, adding value where required, and giving a consistent source of information so all of our library customers need go only to one place to find both the information they're looking for pre-publication to purchase and also the catalogue record when the book is actually published. So there's a great focus on pre-publication information. But I think a second major difference is that BDS records, there is only one for each publication. So there's no need to look at various options and decide which one meets the needs of your institution best. We're a single deduplicated source. And because we've been around for close to 30 years, we have now a database of 50 million records. So there's a strong possibility that if you need a record for a book, we will have one.
And thinking of that anticipatory approach, you said, pre-publication, you also provide records, don't you, to the British Library?
We do, yes. The British Library is our flagship customer, and we're very privileged to have been working with them almost since we began our business. We have been through many tendering processes in 30 years, but thankfully we've always retained the contract, and we really value the fact that we're really proud of the fact that we're producing records for the British National Bibliography. So the British Library helped us get established. They helped to develop our reputation as a quality source of information, and the focus on pre-publication for both physical and digital publications has been a very big part of that service.
So what we've got is a picture here of a very tight single source of records, type business that puts out records through various channels. It's doing pre-publication work. So we're talking about a new age for library metadata, all that experience that you've had over the years, and approaching the academic market now and the changes we're seeing there. What's your take really on what is the components, if you like, of where you see things going in terms of academic libraries and metadata for the future?
Well, I think Plan M was really a catalyst for change in academic library cataloguing. I think the review of requirements came around at the right time, and it's very unfortunate that it coincided with COVID, which I think arrested some of the things that would have been happening. But I think we're getting back to normal a bit more now than we have been for the last couple of years. I think the important thing for academic libraries is to find a model that saves them time and effort. And BDS's service is unashamedly designed to make life easier for its customers. We're trying to do all of the obvious work, creating records to a high standard, pre-publication, following up with a book in hand record where required. And we're trying to anticipate demand, working with digital material as well, to have records ready for use when the customer needs them. And the beauty of working with academic libraries is, although academic libraries their purchasing is much more heterogeneous than public libraries, where largely they're buying the same type of material to a greater or lesser extent. Academic libraries are obviously purchasing to support the curriculum and to support research in their institutions. So there's a much more diverse range of titles being published. And therefore, we're engaging with the publishers that we've worked with over the last 20 years, Harvesting Onyx, and asking them to help us to create a better service for their academic customers. And I think this is a big development. Publishers are understanding the value of MARC records to libraries, how they can't really do very much until they've got a MARC record in their catalogue. And we have some publishers engaging with us to create records for them while others are very happy to share their digital content with us so that we can provide a record at the point of need.
So with this move to electronic books and textbooks and so on, you don't have to have, in a sense, the physical book in hand, but you have got digital copies then that you're getting and therefore creating the metadata on that basis.
Yes, prior to COVID, we had deliveries of books coming in from certain suppliers every single day, quantities of books coming in, indeed on some occasions pallets of books coming in, and we would work through the material as quickly as possible, maintaining strict deadlines for the delivery of the records. And then once we'd catalogued the items, those titles would go back to the source. Post-COVID, we've been working much more with digital content because we've come to recognize that for most physical manifestations of academic titles, there is a digital equivalent. And clearly, if the publisher is cooperating with us and allowing us access to that title, we can be creating records so that the confirmed record can be sent so much more quickly than it would in an environment where books were being shipped backwards and forwards.
And you mentioned Plan M, which is really a UK initiative. And one of the aspects of that in the academic world is this desire to share records for shared catalogues. There's a UK shared catalogue. So here you are, you're the single source. And people are, it's a commercial arrangement. So how do we create an environment where we're able in the academic world to get the record and share it as we need to share it? What do we need to achieve that from your perspective?
I think the first thing to say on that subject is there is no such thing as a free record. Somebody somewhere always has to start by creating that record. And I think that's a point that libraries perhaps have lost in the past. They think if they're creating it themselves, it's free, or if they sit and look for a record, looking at catalogues all over the world or whatever, it's free, but it's not. There's obviously time associated with that process. So we have tried to devise models which mean that we get adequate recompense for the creation of records, but we're here to create records for libraries and we want libraries to use our records. So my colleagues have engaged with their customers to find ways of sharing the records that don't compromise our sales potential. I think it's important to say that we never derive full recompense for the cost of record creation from a single sale. So if we were only ever getting one sale for every record we create, we very quickly wouldn't be here to provide that information. And I think a lot of people have lost sight of the fact that if a central source isn't creating that record, somebody else has to step into the breach and do the work themselves. But we're very used to deriving records now in Britain, which is a complete contrast to my early days working in libraries, where almost everything that we did was from first principles, and there was no way of sharing or deriving records. So we've moved now to an environment where we're deriving material all the time. But somebody has to be the institution that creates the record in the first place.
So I think what you're saying really is we need to find a business model that works, that enables, from your perspective, a central commercial service to provide what, your value, which is efficiency, quality, adherence to standards, but also find a model in which those records, once people have got them into their local catalogues, they can share them adequately, and your business still goes on, and no doubt you're driving around in a massive Rolls Royce or something.
Sadly, no, Ken. I think BDS is, the people who work in BDS have pretty much all come from libraries, so we share the same values as our customers, and making money on a grand scale is certainly something that hasn't happened hitherto, but one can always dream.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd tease you on that one, Lesley. So this picture now, we've got trending in academic libraries, this huge move to electronic content, books and so on. We've got a desire to share for shared catalogues and so on. Thinking of the other things going on in the metadata field, things like BibFrame and linked data, which we've been talking about, it seems to me, for many years. How do they fit into your horizon?
I think the first thing to say is that I have colleagues who are experts in their field and who are actively engaged in developing new standards. If I can mention a couple, Jenny Wright, our Chief Metadata Officer, who, like me, has been here since day one. She's very engaged in looking at data requirements and standards, and many of your audience, I'm sure, will know her from her committee work and the presentations that she does. And similarly, Jo Maxwell is a representative for the UK on the Dewey Committee, and she's helping to develop the standard to fit new developments in publishing and in the world. So I've got people like that who are engaging with practitioners and are feeding back ideas and information to us here. And then Eric and his team and me and my team will decide how best to respond to those requirements. And of course, a key one, the most important one, is to make sure that we're adhering to the new standards and integrating those standards into our records. Because as I understand it, linked data isn't going to work unless the correct information is in the correct place. And the machines can see how best to harness that information to produce the result that the libraries want. I mean, like you, I've been observing the development of BibFrame from afar for a number of years. And certainly when I attended IFLA this year, I felt that one of the presentations I saw was really encouraging on the way BibFrame was developing. But our job here is to create quality metadata so that these tools can be used, these platforms can be used by the library practitioners to surface their information in the way that they would like for the benefit of their institution.
So I guess what we might say then is you see yourself as an enabler. So from a linked data point of view, it needs identifiers and things like that. So you're enabling those identifiers to be standardized and embedded in the record so that people can make use of those links. And in BibFrame, you're following that. And it seems to me that there's certainly opportunities to manage those things centrally. Now, I'm just going to make a point that if anyone wants to ask any questions, please do use the question and answer feature. If you've got any questions, please do that. I will just put into the chat that link I mentioned, which is, if you want to know more about Lesley's 40 years, the cataloguer, there's that there. So we're coming to the end now. And I think it's what we see is we've got in the UK a quite distinctive model here from BDS of supply of library metadata. And I wonder, again, thinking about the new age, put your foresight goggles on. How do you see things, for example, artificial intelligence? I can't pick up a library magazine or a newspaper or anything without a mention of artificial intelligence. Do you think those sorts of technologies have got a role here?
Yes, I do. And I personally have always been interested in artificial intelligence. As my programming colleagues will tell you, I'm constantly asking for what I call an expert system, one that anticipates what the cataloguer should be doing, and they're there to corroborate that and to evaluate it. But I think we can only make use of technology to our advantage if the correct minds are working on how to use this information. And it has to be to our advantage if resource discovery, ultimately our job is all about resource discovery. The catalogue is not an art form in its own right. It's a tool to help discover the resources that an institution holds, and to make that available either to the users of the library or to the world. And therefore, we've got to focus on making these things happen. So I think AI is very important, and there's so many things. We've always made use of algorithms in BDS to make our data faster, quicker, and more consistent. I think there's a lot of scope for that sort of thing to be taken forward further.
That's interesting. So just to conclude, Lesley, here's the opportunity, I think, for you to comment, if you like. Here we are, we've got all these things going on. There's lots of change going on in academic libraries. Is metadata, I mean, let me say, is it just a thing of the past? Is there still a need for it? What are the sorts of ambitions that you'd like to see for us as a sector in terms of metadata? Sorry, there's a couple of questions in there, but just do a bit of thought there.
Well, of course, I think metadata is vital going forward. I think accessing the information in the library catalogue is vital to the students and to the staff. There's a huge amount of investment has gone into creating this information. So it has to be fit for purpose. And I think embracing standards is vital, to the detriment possibly of in-house practice that's may have been perpetuated over many generations of cataloguers. So I would urge anyone who works in this field to be using this time to undertake a root and branch review of what they're doing in their library and thinking about the true cost of creating metadata, not the cost of the service that they subscribe to, but think about all the tools you have to purchase and all of the people involved in that process, and think whether the best use of the staff time is to be doing work that's freely available, sorry, not freely, but easily available from another party, and using the expertise of their staff to be managing the collection and making it accessible to the people who really need help to exploit it.
I think that's an interesting comment, isn't it? Because what I see when I look at the various discussion lists from libraries is a lot of adverts for jobs where there's a student success focus, there's a customer focus. So I think what you're saying there is, if that's the move, then what we can do as a sector is save ourselves some time and effort on this core important thing, metadata, but we've also got to be getting more engaged with students and academics. And it seems to me, I see librarians with titles of student success in their job titles. So there's opportunity to shift, and that phrase that often gets used, isn't it, where libraries are moving to be a more service-oriented institution. And so it sounds to me as if this is one part in which we could perhaps help that development.
I think so. If I was in charge of a major research library in the UK, I would not want my staff to be doing work that other people have already done. I'd want them to be using their knowledge to exploit collection. And nobody really understands the library catalogue better than cataloguers, so they can help people exploit the catalogue to their own advantage. I'd like to thank Ken Chad of KenChadconsulting for inviting me to participate in his series of webinars aimed at the higher education sector. I'd also like to pay tribute to a few people who've made BDS successful over the years. First of all, my fellow founding director, Eric Green, and my two customer-facing colleagues, Sarah Armitage and Heather Sherman, who spread the word about BDS services so effectively. BDS is very much the story of successful exploitation of technology by skilled practitioners. So I'd like to thank all of the people involved in cataloguing activity and all those who write the programs and manipulate the data to get it to the customers in the format they require. Finally, of course, I have to thank the finance team and the publisher liaison team who helped to keep the business running on the right tracks.